Hey everyone, 99% of you watching aren't subscribed. Let's change that. Hit that subscribe button, and at 1,000 subscribers, we'll drop special stories just for you.
Lieutenant Mara Keene had been briefed many times on what it meant to descend into a predator den, but the weight of that knowledge didn't fully settle until her boots touched Vorash soil. The Kotharuk warrens were a labyrinth carved into volcanic stone, glowing with bioluminescent fungi and thin streams of molten heat pulsing through natural cracks. Every sound, every drip of condensation, every scrape of the loam, echoed like a warning. The Vorash were already gathered in a semicircle when she arrived, towering reptilian silhouettes etched against the amber cavern light. Their obsidian scales shimmered like polished armor, their claws curved and sharp. 8 pairs of predatory eyes fixed on her, unblinking. As Mara stepped forward, hands unconsciously lifted toward weapons. Not in a rush, but in a synchronized instinctual ripple. A single silent threat. Her translator hummed softly, ready to convert their growls into speech. But the device trembled in her hand. It's nervous, she thought. Or maybe that's just me. But Mara did not let herself falter. She squared her shoulders, lifted her chin, and offered the traditional Vorash greeting. A fist pressed at her sternum and a slow bow. A few of the warriors hissed approval. Others merely watched, set in the air. Then the largest of them stepped forward. Sarek, clan warlord and rumored undefeated champion of the magma pits. His broad frame eclipsed the cavern lights, casting jagged shadows across the stone. He wore no armor. Vorash seldom did. But bone plates grew along his forearms, a sign of age and prestige. He lowered his head, bringing his snout closer to Mara's height. You enter the den of Kotharuk. The translator echoed in a gravelly monotone. No human has come this deep. I'm aware, Mara said, keeping her voice steady. Are you? Sarek's nostrils flared, inhaling her scent. Your kind masks fear, but fear still leaks. Mara didn't flinch. Fear means respect. I respect your people, and I'm here to learn, not to posture. A moment of silence. Then, a soft churring noise broke the tension. Something tugged on Mara's pant leg. She looked down. Vorash cubs, 4 of them, peeked up at her with bright, luminescent eyes. They were barely half her height, their scales softer and dotted with faint stripes. One sniffed her boot. Another prodded at the pouch on her hip. The smallest wrapped stubby claws around her knee and stared as if expecting a story. The entire council stiffened. A few warriors hissed. Even Sarek's eyes widened a fraction. Mara's translator whispered, "It is uncommon for cubs to approach outsiders." Uncommon, Mara knew, was an understatement. Vorash cubs were fiercely protected. To touch one uninvited was grounds for blood feud. Yet here they were, chirping and nudging her like curious kittens. Slowly, carefully, Mara kneeled. She held out a hand, palm up, letting the little ones investigate. Warm, scaly snouts pressed into her skin. Surprisingly gentle. They accept you, Sarek said. No translation needed. Mara exhaled the breath she'd been holding. That's good. I hope the adults will too. A few warriors snorted. One muttered something the translator labeled as unlikely, but the cubs were relentless. They circled Mara, tugging at her belt, holding up pebbles as gifts and chirping insistently. Vorash cubs communicated mostly through these chirps, tones of curiosity, approval, and territorial claim. Sarek folded his arms. They have claimed you, he said. For now, that protects you. For now did not comfort Mara as much as he probably intended. Still, she rose to her feet and addressed the council again. I'm here on behalf of the Alliance Peace Initiative. If the Vorash and humans are ever to coexist, we must understand one another. Sarek rumbled. Understanding is earned. I'm willing to earn it, Mara replied. A long silence. Then, very well, Sarek said at last, you will stay with us. Learn our ways. Observe our customs. And if you dishonor the young. I won't, Mara promised without hesitation. The Vorash warriors parted to let her through. The cubs scampered after her immediately, chattering brightly. As she walked deeper into Warren, Mara felt dozens of eyes watching from crevices in the rock, judging, measuring, predicting her failure. But the cubs walked beside her, small shadows with sharp teeth, nipping playfully at her heels. And Mara allowed herself a cautious smile. She had come hoping to build peace between two distrustful species. She had no idea she was walking into a destiny that would tie them together in ways neither civilization could imagine. Not yet. Not until the day she stood between these cubs and death, and changed the galaxy forever. 3 months into her stay with the Carve clan, Mara Keen had learned 2 important truths about the Vorash. They trusted slowly. Their enemies were patient. That morning, the cavern smelled faintly of scorched minerals and growing storms, signs of a brewing magma shift beneath the warren. Sark, one of the cubs, kept close, but they were restless, eager to explore the outer tunnels. Mara had become the unofficial soft guardian, someone the cubs felt safe approaching and constantly pestered. So when Sark assigned her to accompany his patrol, the cubs celebrated with excited chirps and tail whips. "Stay between me and the cubs," Sark instructed as they set out. His tone was gruff, but Mara had learned that was as close to "I'm glad you're here" as he ever got. The patrol path wound through lava-glow caverns where the walls pulsed with red light. Fungal lanterns swayed gently, releasing sparkles of iridescent spores. Mara was scanning mineral samples when the first sign of danger appeared, a faint tremor, too rhythmic to be geological. Sark felt it too. His crest stiffened. "Positions," he barked. The warriors fanned out. Forming a defensive arc, Mara herded the cubs behind a rock outcrop, their wide eyes reflecting her concern. "Is it the magma shift?" she whispered. Sark sniffed the air. His eyes narrowed to slits. "No, it is blood." Before Mara could question him, the ceiling cracked open. The SKRYX dropped like living knives. Thin, elongated bodies wrapped in rippling carapace armor. Multi-jointed limbs built for speed. Eyes like jet-black beads. Their sonic blades emitted a high, keening vibration that made Mara's teeth ache. Sark roared and intercepted the first 2 attackers with raw force, claws clashing against sonic steel. A third SKRYX bypassed him entirely, racing toward the cubs. "No!" Mara sprinted without thinking. Her translator crackled with overlapping warnings from the Vorash warriors. The cubs huddled behind her, chirping in terror. One clung to her leg, trembling violently. The SKRYX assassin raised a blade, humming with lethal charge. Mara grabbed the nearest thing she could, a shard of volcanic rock, and swung it with every ounce of strength she had. The blow struck the SKRYX's jaw, cracking the carapace and sending the creature skidding across the floor. The sonic blade tore from its grip. Mara snatched the weapon before she could second-guess herself. It vibrated like a live heartbeat in her hand. The second assassin was already upon her. She barely blocked the slash, sparks exploding where blade met blade. The shockwave numbed her fingers. She ducked, rolled, and lashed out awkwardly but effectively. Humans were not stronger than SKRYX. Not faster, but humans adapted. She fought dirty, going for joints, soft membranes, overextended limbs. Every anatomy lesson from her officer training surfaced with blistering clarity. Her blade sliced through carapace and sinew. The SKRYX screeched and stumbled back. But a third SKRYX had slipped past Sark, approaching from behind. Mara spun too late. The blade slashed across her side. Deep, a cold, sharp pain radiated outward as her knees gave way. She tasted copper. The cub shrieked, a sound so piercing it momentarily stunned the SKRYX. Mara used that heartbeat. She lunged forward, driving the blade she held into the attacker's abdomen. The SKRYX convulsed and fell. She collapsed with it, gasping. Her vision flickered in and out like a dying lantern. The battle still raged around her. Sark, roaring with a fury she had never heard, tore through the remaining assassins with primal brutality. Vorash warriors converged, overwhelming the enemy until the last SKRYX fell silent. Then, silence, except for the soft, frightened whimpers of the cubs. They crawled to Mara's side, nudging her shoulder, chirping desperately for her to get up. Sark reached her first. His claws trembled as he scanned the wound. Vorash rarely touched outsiders, but he lifted her into his arms as though she weighed nothing. "Stay awake, human," he growled, voice cracking. Medical drones are coming. No. Mara's voice was barely a whisper. Each word burned. Cubs safe? Sarek swallowed hard. Yes, because of you. Her eyes softened. Relief washed over her. Good. They're good kids, she exhaled raggedly. Sarek, all young deserve protection. Not just ours. Not just yours. He didn't understand. Not then. The words would echo for years before he fully grasped their meaning. Mara's hand, smeared with violet Escarwag's blood and red human blood, brushed his arm. Don't let the start of war protect them. Her voice faded. Her body went limp. The cubs wailed. Sarek cradled her, shoulders shaking, though Vorash did not have a name for tears. Their grief was a sound, a deep vibrating hum that reverberated through bone and stone. When the reinforcements arrived, they found Sarek kneeling in a pool of battle-scorched earth, holding the broken body of the human who had died, defending their future. No, Vorash spoke on the walk back to the warren. The weight of Mara Keen's sacrifice pressed upon them heavier than any blade. Mara Keen's body was carried into the heart of the Carve warren by warriors who had once doubted she had the strength to survive a single day among them. Now they bore her as though she were a fallen champion. The caverns dimmed as she passed. Bioluminescent fungi curled inward, reacting to the vibrations of Vorash mourning. Even the lava veins running beneath the stone slowed their pulsing glow, as if the entire mountain bowed its head. The cubs followed close behind, refusing to be separated from her. Their chirps were subdued, fractured things, sounds, confusion, and grief. One carried her broken translator in its small claws, refusing to let it go. Sarek walked to the front, his massive form trembling under a burden heavier than her lifeless body. As they entered the central hollow, the Vorash high clans, leaders from across the planet, formed a circle. Their scales glimmered with ritual ash. Silence stretched, thick enough to choke on. At last, Elder Thran spoke. Tell us, he said, how the human died. Sarek's jaw tightened. Protecting our young. She fought 3 Escarwag's assassins alone. She killed them and paid with her life. A low, resonant murmur rippled through the hall. Shock, disbelief, shame. Elder Thran stared hard at Sarek. Why would an outsider do this? Sarek swallowed. Because she believed the young, and the young are worth protecting. That is not our way, Thran rasped. No, Sarek said softly, painfully. It is better. A heavy silence followed. The high clans exchanged glances. Vorash culture revered strength, endurance, and the protection of their own bloodlines. Outsiders were tolerated at best, distrusted at worst. But what Mara had done violated every assumption they'd ever held about humans. A warrior from the Redmaw clan stepped forward. His voice rumbled like distant thunder. She died with honor. She died with courage. These things we respect. But she was not Vorash. Sarek's eyes narrowed. She fought like one. She protected our cubs. Your cubs. Would you have done less? A hiss rippled through the crowd. Not anger, embarrassment. Before further debate could begin, a shrill cry echoed through the chamber. One of the cubs, the smallest, still striped faintly along the snout, shuffled forward on trembling legs. It tugged at Sarek's arm, pointing its tiny claw at Mara's still chest, then at itself. Then it pressed its forehead to her hand. A universal gesture of claim, a child's plea not to be left behind. The high clan stared, stunned. For a Vorash cub to claim an outsider, as kin was nearly unheard of, and never posthumously. It was a bond deeper than blood, one that demanded recognition. Another cub stepped forward. Then another. Soon all 4 cubs stood before the council, their foreheads pressed to Mara's hands, their tails curled around her arms. They had made their decision. The Vorash did not ignore decisions made by the young. Elder Thran exhaled shakily. The cubs name her as family. Sarek bowed his head. They loved her, as did I. The elder looked at Mara's pale face, a face that, even in death, carried determination. There has been no first protector in 5 generations, he said slowly. No outsider has ever held the title. Another elder growled. She is no outsider. Not anymore. The hall fell deep into contemplation. Then the decision came, not from the eldest, but from the youngest council leader, Lurith, who stepped forward with her blade held high. "We owe a debt that reaches beyond blood," she declared. "Let her name be inscribed into our steel. Let every warrior who draws a blade remember her strength." The hall erupted into a thunderous chorus of approval, deep, vibrating roars that shook dust from the cavern ceiling. Mara Keen would become legend, the forging of the first keen blade. The ritual forge lay in a cavern where molten streams converged in shimmering orange rivers. Only the most sacred weapons were forged here. The heat was so intense that even Vorash craftsmen wore volcanic plating on their arms. Sarek placed a shard of the HFY blade Mara had used, still stained with both their blood, into the forge master's hands. "She wielded this," Sarek said. "Use it. Let her strength be bound into ours." The forge master bowed deeply, as the clan's will. He melted the shard into the molten iron drawn from a meteor that had birthed the Carve clan centuries ago. The metal hissed, folded, and glowed white-hot as the forge master hammered into shape. A long, sweeping blade with a curve reminiscent of a rising fawn. The cubs watched, their eyes reflecting the fiery glow. Sarek stood motionless beside them. Hours passed. When the blade was quenched in volcanic water, steam billowed upward like a ghost's final breath. The forge master raised it high. "What name is inscribed?" he asked. Sarek's voice was steady, but his hands trembled. "Keen," he said, "she who protected our future." The inscription was carved in Vorash runes. "Kina Keen, first protector, bloodless mother of the cubs." When the blade was complete, the high clans gathered. Each warrior knelt as the weapon passed from hand to hand. A vow was spoken by all. Let her courage guide our claws. Let her memory sharpen our blades. Let Keen be carried into every battle, and let no warrior forget the debt. The cubs pressed their tiny claws against the blade's edge, marking it with their scent, an ancient right of familial claim. Sarek knelt last. He touched the blade to his forehead, then to his heart. "For you," he whispered, "always, a legacy begins." By dawn the next day, forges across the warren ignited with renewed flame. Smiths worked nonstop. Warriors lined up in solemn silence. Every new blade forged bore a single additional rune, Mara Keen's. Even older warriors carved her name into weapons they had carried for decades, honoring the outsider who had died for their children. Her funeral pyre lit the caverns with a brilliance rarely seen. Sparks rose upward like stars, lifting her memory to the vaulted stone sky. When the flames died, the Vorash did something no outsider had ever witnessed before. They sang, a low, resonant, bone-deep melody, a song of honor, a song of family, a song of a human who had died a Vorash death. And thus, the legacy of the keen blades began, not as a symbol of war, but of unity forged in blood, courage, and sacrifice. Years had passed since Mara Keen's death. Years since her name had been carved into every new Vorash blade. Years since the cubs she saved had grown tall and strong. Their stripes faded into the dark sheen of adulthood. But across the stars, the galaxy had not grown quieter. Tensions between the Vorash and the HFY escalated into open conflict. Skirmishes erupted on border moons, then full battles. The Vorash high clans were not eager for war, but neither would they forgive their ancient enemies for the assassination attempt that had claimed their first protector. When the Vorash marched to war, the ground trembled beneath their feet. Yet something was different now. They marched not only for honor, not only for territory, but for Keen, the first cry of war. On the eve of the first major battle, the warriors gathered in the cavernous war circle. Torches burned blue, an omen of decisive combat. The air vibrated with tension as clan leaders traced tactics across holographic displays. Sarek, now grizzled with age but still impossibly broad-shouldered, stood at the center. He raised his voice, deep as shifting stone. "The HFY seek to break our lines," he said. "They think themselves swift, but they have forgotten one thing." He drew his blade, its runes glowing faintly in the torchlight. "They have forgotten her." A rumble of agreement swept through the room. Lurith, the youngest clan leader who had first declared Keen's honor, stepped forward. Her blade bore a special engraving, Not only Keen's name, but the outline of a human hand at the hilt. "We fight," Lura said, "with the strength she taught us. We protect our young as fiercely as she protected ours. And we remember her courage when we charge into the dark." Dozens of warriors unsheathed their blades in unison. The air cracked with the resonance of steel infused with memory. The Battle of the Fractured Moon. The Vorash landed on the cracked lunar surface under a blood-red sky. The SKRYX forces were already entrenched, their fortifications glistening like insect hives grown from metal and bone. Sarek signaled the advance. Vorash warriors charged across the battlefield, their claws raking into the fractured stone. Plasma fire lit the horizon. Sonic blades shrieked through the air. Yet through the chaos, one sound rose above all others. For Keen, it echoed across comm channels, thundered in Vorash war cries, vibrated to the bones of every combatant. The SKRYX faltered. Some paused mid-strike. Others hesitated, exchanging fearful glances. Many had heard the stories, the fables of a human ghost who walked with the Vorash, guiding their claws. Rumor said she had risen after death, or that her spirit clung to the blades bearing her name. Superstition rooted deeply in the SKRYX psyche, and fear, once seated, grew quickly. Sarek carved through enemy lines with the same blade forged from her final battle. His movements were slower now, age tugging at his muscles, but every strike carried a lifetime of devotion. When an SKRYX captain lunged at him, Sarek parried and drove his blade into ground beside the creature's head. "This is for the human you killed," he growled. The SKRYX screeched in terror, not at Sarek, but at the glowing runes on the blade. Keen. They scrambled back, tripping over their own limbs, unable to process how deeply her story had carved itself into their enemies' hearts, and into their fears. Legacy of the bloodless mother. While the adults fought, the cubs she saved grew into warriors of incomparable skill. Each bore a distinct mark of Mara, a pattern of etched lines on her armor forming an abstract human silhouette. These four, now known across the clans as the Bloodless Brood, became legends in their own right. They trained young warriors using her methods: unpredictability over brute strength, adaptation over tradition, protection over aggression. They promoted tactics inspired by their childhood memories: Mara dodging, thinking, adapting faster than her enemies. One night around a war fire, a young recruit asked them, "Why do we honor a human as kin?" The eldest of the brood replied, "Because blood did not bind her to us. Choice did, and choice is stronger." Their words spread across the clans, spoken again and again until they became a proverb. Sarek's final visit. After the battle, peace negotiations began. The SKRYX, shaken by heavy losses and the legend haunting Vorash blades, agreed to an armistice. Sarek returned to the shrine deep within the Carve warren, a quiet hollow carved around Mara's statue. The sculptors had shaped her in the stance she used when defending the cubs. 1 foot forward, her arm raised, protective, fierce. In her stone hand lay a Vorash blade, etched with her name. Sarek placed his hand on the statue's shoulder. "I once thought humans weak," he murmured, "but you changed everything. You showed us courage without claws. You protected our future. You gave your life for cubs you did not know." He exhaled, a low rumble of grief and gratitude. "We have repaid the debt," he said, "but we have not forgotten it, nor will we ever." Behind him, the brood approached quietly. The eldest spoke. "Father," he said, "not by blood, but by bond. The negotiators request your presence." Sarek smiled faintly. "Let them wait a moment." He bowed his head to the statue one last time, a name carried into forever. Centuries later, historians would say the Vorash-human alliance began with diplomacy. They were wrong. It began with a human who refused to let children die. It began with courage untempered by fear. It began with sacrifice. And so, throughout generations, every Vorash warrior carried a blade etched with one name: Keen, a name that crossed species, cultures, and planets. A name spoken before every battle. A name that became a promise. To protect the innocent. To defend the young. To stand between darkness and those who cannot stand alone. A name that would never be forgotten.